If you were anything like me as a kid, you were often deemed weird, shy, sweet, creative, yet somehow always misunderstood. But we expressed ourselves and our interests were a highly debated topic among family and friends. They just couldn't figure us out. So who did we turn to? None other than Melanie Martinez. The internet was the first place I found a sense of understanding and community that was deeper than the connections I had in person. This was heavily through music and different artists. I would obsess and become totally consumed by whoever I was listening to. I would make fan accounts and stay up to date with anything slightly related to the artist. To me, this artist was Melanie Martinez. I can remember the moment my friend introduced me to her by playing the Dollhouse music video in my bedroom. After that, I was hooked. But why? What was so special about Melanie Martinez? Why was I and so many others completely enamored for years? Why do some continue to be? Hi guys, welcome back to Virtual Pet Show. I'm your host Fletcher, and today we have a very introspective and bittersweet video. Recently, I've been watching a lot of Melanie Martinez deep dives, especially these in particular, and they've made me reevaluate my perspective of her and her art. I know this isn't a unique experience, as many of us who were kids when we found her are now looking at her through the lens of being an adult. But from what I've seen, most of the people covering her controversies were not fans prior or around for the Crybaby era, which I consider the peak of Melanie's career and fandom. That inspired me to make this video, to give a fan perspective as someone who was there from the start. I won't be going into depth about all her controversies as other creators have done wonderfully, but instead I wanted to evaluate why we were so drawn to Melanie Martinez, her music, and her artistry. Pastels, vintage toys, childish metaphors, dresses, doll-like makeup, cookies, imaginary friends, playpens, childhood. Even if you didn't grow up with the aesthetic that is heavily present in Melanie Martinez's Crybaby, you still feel a sense of nostalgia. Her visuals bring you back to a more simple time. No responsibilities, no electronics, just us in our homes. No wonder we were so drawn in as kids, being 8, 9, 10, 11 years old, beginning to figure out the world and moving through transitional phases. She provided a sense of nostalgia to a childhood that was slowly becoming out of reach, while also pairing it with topics that were starting to feel more familiar to us. Crybaby combines fond childhood scenes with the ugly truth. To some of us, it was our first introduction to these topics, or our very first time hearing music that dealt with them. It created a cognitive dissonance between our own lives and what's appropriate for childhood. It made us feel like the children we were, while presenting us this fantasy of being grown up. The story of Crybaby covers a variety of traumas: anxiety, depression, family issues, isolation, kidnapping, drugging, SA, abuse, etc. And although Melanie herself didn't experience these traumas, the way she wrote about them felt personal. Many of us felt understood by her and connected our pain to her music. We could see ourselves in Crybaby and her experiences, using the story and music as a source of comfort, visibility, and in our own way, as a voice for ourselves. Melanie made us feel seen. We could escape into her world, drown out everything else, and be immersed in this dark story. Melanie created a space that was so familiar and warm, yet dangerous, but the danger was kept at a safe distance. It was happening to Crybaby, not us, even if it was present in our reality. Crybaby let us separate ourselves from our trauma, and we ended up projecting onto Crybaby and putting her through these scenarios, just like Melanie was. However, she wasn't projecting, but we didn't know that, so we felt a false sense of security. Aside from the traumatic aspect of Crybaby, Melanie herself was interesting to us. She had this unique split-dyed hair and these cool tattoos, paired with a vintage fashion sense. She described herself as shy, quiet, introverted, always the weird kid growing up, telling instances of how she was bullied in school and given the name Crybaby as an insult for being too emotional. She was exactly who an outcast kid like me could relate and look up to. Her song Mad Hatter being a personal anthem for many of us to feel comfortable in our skin. Her visuals, aesthetic, style, and approach were different to mainstream. It made us feel confident in ourselves and our ideas. That no matter how much of an outcast we felt like, we had Melanie, and we had Crybaby to live vicariously through. To close out this video, I wanted to focus on what makes Crybaby and her story so damaging. Since I watched the deep dives on Melanie and started dissecting my thoughts about the Crybaby story, there's been a few questions circling my mind. It's fiction, telling the tale of fake characters, places, and situations. Why is it wrong? What makes it different from other similar stories? Why is this harmful, even though it's fiction? Let's compare and contrast real quick. Let's take the novel Lolita. Both Crybaby and Lolita have the sexualization of children. So how is Lolita different from Crybaby? Lolita is from the perspective of a predator. When Dolores is seen as a sexual being, it is through his eyes. When you read the book, this is understood. It was made with the intent to show the disgusting mind of a predator, ways they try to justify their actions, and tactics they use to get close to their victims. It's a cautionary tale of what happens to children every day. Crybaby is from Crybaby's perspective. Melanie depicts her and other child characters as sexual, as understanding sex, relationships, and other mature themes, which children do not. It's not from the lens of a predator, or a tragic story of what happens to children when they experience trauma. Melanie has stated that her childhood was the opposite of Crybaby's, and that the trauma she writes about, she herself has not experienced. She has never explained Crybaby as being about the effects of trauma on a child and how that can make them act hypersexual or be put in situations they don't understand. Instead, she has stated she just likes making stories and music that people can relate to, which in itself is perfectly fine. Many artists write fictional stories or about trauma they haven't experienced. However, usually child characters are not involved. There are no visuals depicting adults playing as children and doing inappropriate things. There is no imagery of the child character in dangerous situations. And considering the timeline of other albums, Crybaby takes place before she even goes to school, making her a toddler. It crosses the line of fiction when you are depicting a child as a sexual being. Crybaby opposes the idea that Lolita was trying to voice. How Melanie makes Crybaby act is the exact way predators justify themselves. They blame the children, their actions, their clothes, their features, often saying a child led them on, or that they understood what they were doing. And you have to remember, we as children were internalizing her content. She made it seem like these topics were normal for children, that we could act how Crybaby did, that we were mature and understood, and she had recognized she had extremely young fans. With all that to say, Melanie has claimed that she creates pop surrealism and does not sexualize babies. But why is Crybaby put in sexual situations and acts like she understands them? What was Melanie's intent with depicting this toddler character in such a harmful way? Why didn't she rethink her concept when it was attracting young children to be her fans? That's what you have to ask yourself. Fiction does not get a pass just because it's fiction. And sometimes we have to realize that something or someone we used to love was actually fucked up. You can't blame your child self for getting infatuated by Melanie's vivid, weird, and strange world. You've gotten older and see things from a perspective you weren't capable of before. Even though it hurts and is disappointing, this is proof you've grown and can be critical of the things you're deeply attached to. I hope I was able to give some clarity and spark thought about this entire situation. Feel free to share how you feel down in the comments, but please be respectful and do not attack each other. This video is in no way a hate video. I am not judging anyone who still listens to Melanie's music, but I would rethink maybe supporting her in the future or buying merch or anything like that. I'll see you guys next time. Bye.